Alright everybody, welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today we have a quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua in front of us. I just soaked it with water and I'm going to jump right into painting. Thinking that today will kind of be a water mountain type scene, but we'll play it by ear. I'm just going to go with the flow. This is raw sienna. I want to go really light with the sky. That's what I have in my mind, at least. That just going to go very soft. Do the whole above and below thing. Mountain range. This seems to be my go-to horizon spot. You'll have to forgive me. Still not feeling up to par. I think 2 days ago I painted some, and then yesterday I was just in bed all day. So I don't know what it is, but I'm just not feeling good. Ultramarine blue. I don't want any brush strokes to show through in the sky. So I'm just going very, very soft with these colors. And hopefully they'll dry even softer. I want to put some inkling illusion of clouds in the sky. Thinking what I'll do is grab some Payne's Gray. I just really want just a small amount. Alizarin Crimson. I just want like small little clouds that barely show up, that you kind of have to look for. Let's see. Once again, I don't want really the brush strokes to show through. I just want just soft. Down here we're going to have the water. I'm going so light, I'm not sure if it's showing up. Yep, it is showing up. I think in my mind is Hermann Herzog. He was a German-born, German-taught, I believe, as well, landscape painter who came to America and then was one of the Hudson River Valley painters. He was a realist. I'm not a realist with painting landscapes. Not at that point yet. But Hudson River Valley type inspired idea in my mind. And it must also be, who would it be? It would be Carlson. I think it's Carlson. Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting, who had said, you can't paint the sky too light, which is something that I adhere to in some paintings, and that's what I'm really pushing in this one, just light sky. All right, now I have a land form come across here, and there's a Herman Herzog painting that I had sketched that had a composition of this form. So raw sienna, mute it with ultramarine, this is the foreground, and I have that a mountain type range here. Just feeding a little bit color and get a little bit of variation. I don't, this is something I've kind of talked about in other videos, is that I'm trying not to do too much tonal variety, I mean lights and darks in the foreground, just more of a textured changes so that the eye doesn't really fall immediately right there. It doesn't stop the eye, it lets the eye travel further into the page. I'm also live streaming this, so every so often I'll get up and take a look and see if anybody has commented. Okay, let me take a step back from that. Let me grab a number 4. Okay. I don't really plan a color, just jumped right in, but let me go back. Let me grab some Venetian red and some ultramarine. I go to distant purple. You could use light red oxide instead of Venetian red if you're following along. In fact, I welcome you to follow along. I would love to see y'all's results. Just kind of map out. Where these mountains are going to go. I didn't do any dry off, which is something that I have done in other videos where we have a mountain range in it, and I would highly suggest, or highly recommend, experimenting with first trying mountains wet and wet and see how you like it, and then trying where you put all the other stuff in, drying off, and then putting the mountains in, and experiment and see which one works for you. or try it for different paintings. Try one that goes wet and wet, and one that goes like kind of dry, I guess dry brushed on after you dry off with a blow dryer. There's a little bit of difficulty with controlling the edges with the wet and wet. As you can tell, I'm getting the blooms on the edges, which is a little difficult. However, it does give some character to it. And then you can pursue that for hazy heat effects or fog effects. James Fletcher Watson has a great example in his book about using a wet area along the top edge to show a cloud rolling up over the mountain itself. This area would be covered by a mat, but I think it's good to paint to the edges. Back here is going to be lighter. So keep in mind aerial perspective. Look at the Hudson River Valley painters and stare at their mountain lines. Mountain lines kind of sounds like mountain lions. Whenever I'm not feeling good, I get a little, my mind gets a little trippy, so I apologize. That's how you know I'm not feeling good. Bringing down their reflections. Anyway, look at the Hudson River Valley painters with their mountains. Look for alternating darks and lights within them. That will give the idea of light falling on the mountain. For me, I'm kind of just diving right in and just painting these mountains. I don't really have much plan with direction for light, but that's something that I should have had planned and thought about. So I'm kind of darkening this spot where there'd be a ridge and it would catch it. And you'd have those darks happen, and then you'd have less changes take place as the mountain range recedes. And you got to be careful here as well, since the paper's still wet, that you don't want to get cauliflowers. Now, look at the base where they hit the water, and there is a little gap where I helped recede them back. One rule or trick that you see often with painting reflections, paint reflections darker than the object. So if it's a light object reflecting, paint the reflection darker. If it's a super dark object, paint the reflection lighter. It's often just kind of a go-to rule that you'll see in a lot of different art books. What I'm trying to do is leave a little bit of a gap of light on the water between the base of the mountain ranges and the mountains themselves. Once again, wet and wet is a little inhibitive there, so just play around. I'm going to darken this up. So I'm darkening this reflection right here. And to darken it, to warm it up or whatever, I'm just mixing in burnt sienna into my mix of the ultramarine and Venetian red. And this warming up of that, the reason I'm doing that is first of all to give me a dark there to prevent the eye from going off the left side of the paper. So it's just, and you'll hear me talk about that all the time, eye going off the left side, eye going off the right side. So it's kind of different than what I'm usually painting for y'all, but I'm trying to, I don't know, lately, when I did paint 2 days ago, I did a portrait practice with gouache, and then did work on a little bit of oil underpaintings, and I guess when I was doing the oils, I was thinking Hudson River Valley. So we kind of have that foggy heat feel. Now, we have to do something about the eye going off this side of the page. But first, while I'm still wet and wet, add a little bit more dark in the foreground. Throw some raw sienna in here. So I'm going to put a tree structure up here. I'm going to let this recede back. This is also a common little thing that I've been doing. Just kind of feel out the paper. I had raw sienna and whatever dark was on the brush. As you can tell, I don't really wash the brushes anymore during these paintings. Darken the inside. And when I say inside, this is the spot that's going to get less light. Put trunks in. So the goal here is to prevent the eye from going off the page. I'm having a little buckling issue with this paper. I don't usually have that issue, but most likely stems from me literally walking into the room that I have dedicated for art, grabbing a half sheet and tearing the quarter sheet while just standing in the air, like standing up, you know, like not putting it down on anything. I was just like, I need to paint. After this, I might try to eat something and then lay back down. And not to be like alarmist or anything like that, but I mean, me and the fiance have been exposed to people who have tested positive for the COVID, so she's awaiting her results. and all that. So we'll see. I mean, not to like talk about something sad, bum, or you know, things like that on the channel. Now, let's do a dry off, and then we'll see what needs to be done. So, oh, nope, still wet. All right, so that's the wet and wet portion. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it at this and then take a picture, upload the video in this stage, and then from there probably proceed to do a second video where then I'll paint over this one and accentuate and build up and whatnot. So we'll call this kind of step 1. All right, I'll be back with step 2.